Yeah.
And now we welcome in, you know him from Prong, longtime guitar player for Madonna, and currently he's in ministry. He's also got a bunch of really great solo records out there, some of which are on Metal Blade Records. My friend, Mr. Monte Pittman, how are you, sir?
Hey, very good. Very good. How are you guys doing? Great to see you.
Good, good. All good. So how did you get into ministry? That's my first question for you.
That first happened, I met Al through Tommy Victor. So, one of the Prong albums, Power of the Damager, was recorded in El Paso. And
Tornillo, Texas, by
it,
the way.
oh, Tornillo. Okay, yeah, right. Okay. Um, and so Tommy was playing in ministry, and then Al produced the album, and so that's how we first met. And then me and Al just became friends, and it's one of those things that over time you see each other, like maybe not for a long time, but you kind of become friends that way. And that sort of turned into, hey, one day we got to play some music together. And then in 20, I don't know, 13 or 14, 15, somewhere on there, I've joined the band then, but just as we were about to leave to go on tour, I got called to go back to Madonna, and so I figured that wasn't going to happen. But then, like 6 years ago or so, they reached out again where they needed a guitar player again, and so at this time it worked out.
Awesome. Yeah, I figured it was the Tommy Victor thing because I know,
Yeah.
Prong and Al had a thing. And real quick, so the studio in Tornillo, Texas, which is just outside of El Paso, it's owned by this pecan farmer. It's got this
Hmm.
gigantic pecan farm down there, and he's kind of a failed musician who wants to be in the music business somehow. So he put together this beautiful state of the art studio. I've been there quite a few times. We had Cannibal Corpse recorded there a few times, and a bunch of other stuff. This is where I first met Al. Actually, was Ministry was recording down there, and this was probably 2016 or something. And it was a fun time talking to him. He was sober, very sober at the time, so that was good.
Hmm.
It was very lucid and stuff. But yeah, great guy. It was fun. We got to hear a little bit of the stuff that he was doing because they have two. I know they still do, but they had two studios down there. I think one of them they actually built for him. Maybe I don't remember, but yeah, great studio down there. And El Paso is kind of a cool little town there. Although you can't go into Juarez anymore, obviously from all the stuff going on, which
Right. Yeah.
is what it is. But yeah, great, really great studio down there. Like I said, we've done. I know we did a bunch of Cannibal Corpse records down there. I think we did something else. Anyway, so we're talking about Just One Fix, and I thought
Okay.
that it's to me. I mean, I love all those early Ministry, industrial metal or whatever you want to call them songs. But this always like this one just because the riff is so insanely heavy, and
Hmm.
it really did usher in on a variety of levels a new form of metal. I mean, because we had heard stuff like this before, and there were some different things, but Ministry was able to do it and bring it to the masses where it became mainstream. So what's that? I don't play guitar. I don't know how to play guitar. No,
I
I
can
don't play.
change that.
No, you can't. Trust me, you can't. You always say that, but you can't. So
Yeah.
what's this riff like? Is it a simple riff? Is it a complex riff? I mean, I just know that it's amazing.
Right. Yeah. It's. I think it's fairly simple. It's only on 3 frets, and I call that the magic frets. Like all the best riffs are on the third fret, fifth fret, sixth fret. Those are just like the perfect notes that go with a great riff. Um, and so when we were making the Hopium for the Masses album, um, I would go over there to the studio even just to hang out, you know, just about every day. And so I got to kind of get in Al's head and see how he writes some of this music. And we would always take a lunch break and go, like, we'd have lunch and I would ask him, like, how did you write this song? How did this happen? How did this happen? And when it came up to Just One Fix, I'm like, how did you write Just One Fix? And he said they had a sequencer and they were putting in the notes, and that's as far as they could figure out the sequencer. Like it just got to those notes, and then him and Mikey started playing that same sequencer riff on guitar. And the whole song is just about one riff. There's one other riff that changes, so that one riff carries the entire song.
And
And there's
I'm glad you mentioned that because I was going to talk about that too. It's like it's such a great riff that it's pretty much that's the song. It's just that riff over and over again, but you don't ever get sick. And I think the magic of songs like that are like that riff is so good. Like I could listen to a 10-minute version of that song and not get tired of that
Hmm.
riff.
Yeah, and it's a lot of fun to play. Like that's that's the point in the show that I always look forward to. When we play that, that's like the song we would sound check with.
Yeah,
Um,
it's interesting too because like I said, this was kind of a new different type of form of metal, and it was also really interesting because talking about the early '90s, and it was they were like you mentioned sequencers, and there was some of this computer technology coming into the recording, but not like what we have today. But they were doing
mhm.
stuff that even on the drums that kind of in some ways have come to form of like blast beats and various things that they were not necessarily doing blast beats exactly that, but they're experimenting with stuff like that. And it really worked. And it did kind of change the way a lot of people recorded the music and the drums and everything else, including in metal, because before that, you couldn't really use anything other than just generic, real drums. But this was a whole different genre coming from a whole different background. And I remember hearing that and going like, wow, it's really different, but it's really cool. And that kind of ushered in a whole new wave of how people make records and make metal records.
Yeah, it was very innovative for sure. Um, and then what? Yeah, TV2, another song on that album. Like it does get really fast, where it
Yep.
borderlines blast beats. There's also in Just One Fix when I first joined the band, like over 10 years ago, and I was just listening to this stuff because how I came into the band was became friends with Al. This isn't something I went and said, oh, I want to audition for this
Yeah.
band. It's just like one of those things like where you're friends and then like, hey man, we got to play together, and then that winds up happening. But then when I'm going and listening to this music, like where I'm going to learn it to perform it, it seems like the riff constantly changes. So like, you're okay, am I supposed to count like it's going to go this way 12 times, and then 16 measures later it's going to change? Like what if you lose count? But there's another track that just goes digga, 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 digga. And that like blends in with the riff that makes the whole thing makes a machine sort of.
Yep. Yep.
Mhm.
Yeah, and that's something else that he was really good, or ministry in general, really good at, is combining those. And I love stuff like that. When I was producing records, we'd put in those little cherries, like stuff like that, just like a little extra thing in the background, or an extra riff, or an extra like a lead that is like one note higher than the other one, so it kind of goes up and
Mhm.
down. Just little stuff like that that I stole and we all stole from Priest and Thin Lizzy and all those bands of the
Ear
70s.
ear candy, yeah.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. The Ministry was really great at that because when you listen to the records in headphones, like, oh, I didn't really hear that part before, but now that I hear it, oh wow, that makes so much more sense as to why it's such a full, complete, super heavy song, or super heavy riff.
Yeah, and then last year we put out the Squirrely Years. We remade the songs from the first two albums, and it's really incredible how you can see how you can take a song that's like one genre of music and sort of remake it to another genre of music, and it's still a good song. Like good songs are good songs.
Yeah, a
So
million percent. I've always said that. You can also never go wrong with putting out a good song, whether it's popular or not, because popularity is that's a whole other can of worms. But yeah, and that was the whole thing of the early '90s was metal. The old metal was dying or dead, which was fine because a lot of it become hair metal and radio metal and all that garbage that needed to go away. And you had the grunge stuff come in, and then Ministry from and if some other, Skinny Puppy and some of those other bands that were kind of in that
mhm.
same scene came out, and they also did a whole new version of metal that was fresh and new and interesting. I remember the first time hearing Ministry, I was like, "Whoa, this is really different," but I really like it. It's still really heavy, even though it's got all these different influences, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah, it crosses a few different genres. And then when we go out on tour, like did one tour where we had the Melvins and Corrosion of Conformity, and then another tour where we had Frontline Assembly and Nitzareb. Like it's like for the audience like that, it fits both both
Yep.
styles. That some people may think like, oh, those are two different things, but it's, it all works together.
Yeah, I think people now are much more embracive of that sort of stuff, where you can have different bands go out with different bands. You couldn't prior to really the early '90s. You couldn't do that, especially if you're a metal band. Like, oh, God forbid, there's some other weird band on there. But yeah, and I noticed the last time I saw you guys was just I like the crowd, like watch the crowd and stuff. I'm always in the crowd. I don't like to watch from backstage or any of that nonsense.
Hmm.
But it's really interesting because you had a lot of hardcore metal people but you had a lot of other people that were more alternative leaning or, industrial leaning. And I thought it was interesting because everybody had the same response, obviously, because you guys are amazing live. But it was really cool to see that cross section of people. And again, if you rewind 30 some odd years ago, you couldn't really see that at a show necessarily because it wasn't cool for this type of audience to go to a show like that, or for a metal type of audience to go to that show. So I like that all these barriers have kind of been broken down, and certainly Ministry was one of the leading forces of that.
Yeah, you see, all walks of life. There's a variety of everything, at the shows. You'll see little kids up front, with their parents, and uh, yeah, it's that's it's something that's unique with that band for sure.
Sure. So we got to get into your story. If you don't know Monty's
Okay.
story, it's like one of the greatest stories of all time. So
Gosh.
from beautiful Longview, Texas, which I'm very
Yeah.
familiar
Yeah.
with,
Well,
he came to Hollywood to work at Guitar Center, and well, I'll let you tell the story about how you became Madonna's guitar player and all of that good stuff.
yeah. Well, I was working at Guitar Center. I was terrible at selling guitars or selling the guitars that would make you money.
Yeah,
And I'd also joined Prong. And at the time, I lived in Redondo Beach because I liked the area. I didn't know any better. And just my cousin had lived in Manhattan Beach, and I went to visit her. And that's when I said, "Oh, I'm moving to LA. Like,
yeah,
this is great." And so I worked at Guitar Center in Hollywood because I figured I would meet the most musicians there. And then I rehearsed with Prong up in Burbank. So not realizing how, never living in a big city like that before, I didn't realize how much driving was involved. And after a while, the last thing I wanted to hear was the sound of a guitar after working at Guitar Center and stuff like that. So I came up with this idea of like, okay, either I'm going to just move back to Texas, or before I do that, people used to always come in and ask for guitar teachers, but we didn't, there weren't any. I figured it's Hollywood. There's, you name it, like, some of the, I used to say like, isn't like Steve Vai teaching down the street, but not that he would do that, but, or maybe he would. So what I did is I said, look, I'm going to quit, and I don't sell enough of the guitars, the right guitars, to make commission. You had to sell so much before you even made commission. So I said, okay, I'm going to make these cards. Everybody you sell a guitar to, give them my card, and I'll give you like $20 each student. And people are like, oh, you don't have to do that. So I do that, and then all of a sudden, it started really taking off. And my second or third inquiry was this guy saying he wanted to take lessons. He needed to get lessons for his boss. And the way he said this, it sounded like like a contractor that makes buildings or something like that.
yeah,
And so I drive up, so I drive up I drive up to this house, and I'm at the gate, and I go in, and I pull in, and I park my car, and I'm like, am I seeing this right? And there's Madonna, pregnant, out to here and sitting with her daughter, and I'm like, okay, all right, what's this all about? And I get out and I say, hey, I'm here to see Guy, and she was dating Guy Ritchie, and so I was there to teach Guy Ritchie, and I didn't know who this was. It's before Snatch came out,
yeah,
and
yeah.
he had surgery on his knee, and so he was kind of like off his feet. She had bought him an acoustic guitar, and so this was when like Coldplay and Radiohead and Oasis, all these kind of bands were, really big. So like acoustic guitar was something featured in all that music. So perfect for teaching and saying, hey, here's E minor, here's G, here's E, here's the same chords in these songs. So you have something you could play. And so I started going over to the house and teaching him like 3 times a week. And then I became friends with Madonna from that because I'm teaching her boyfriend. And then she put out the her music album. And when that happened, so at this time I had moved up to Hollywood and I had a roommate, and I was just sitting in my room and I was just practicing, and my roommate says, "Hey, I heard." He goes, "Are you still going to that woman's house?" And I'm like, That's just a strange way for him to put that. And he goes, I heard that she put out a new album today." And I just grabbed my keys and I didn't say anything to him. I just hauled ass down the street, and I got to was it Virgin? Yeah, Virgin, that was at Crescent Heights and Sunset, and they
Yep.
were about to lock the door. And I said, "Hey, can I just get that CD?" And they're like, "Okay." And so they let me buy that CD. So then I went home and I listened to it and I wrote out every song. And the next morning I had a lesson with Guy, and there was a song that she wrote for him, and the chords are A minor, G, D. And I'm like, "This is perfect." So I say, "Hey, check this out. This, the album came out yesterday, and this song that she wrote, it's these same chords that I'm teaching you." And he's like, "Wow." And he goes, "How did you get this?" I'm like, "Well, the album came out yesterday." He goes, "Yeah, I know the album came out yesterday. How did you get it?" I'm like, "Well, the album came out yesterday and I wrote it out." He's like, "You already figured out the entire album?" I'm like, "Yeah." I didn't want to say it's just A minor G, and so then he just walked out of the room, and I'm like, it was almost like I felt like, did I do something wrong? But he told her, he's like, "This dude coming over here, he figured out your whole album and wrote it out." And so then was like, all right. So then I start teaching her, and I figured, she'll take one lesson and that'll be it. And then I started, going over and seeing her like 3 times a week, which, this is a big part of my week now, is going over and teaching both of them. She hadn't even been taking lessons for a month from me. And she would always kind of like, like play around with me, joke around with me. And especially then, like I was fresh from Texas, and she said something like, the way she said it was like, "Hey, yeah, you want to come play Letterman with me on Thursday or something?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure." We're tuning our guitars. And I thought she was just playing around, being funny. And at the end of the lesson, she says, "Okay, well, my manager will reach out and we'll set up all the travel and all that." And I'm like, you're not joking. Like, I'm gonna go play David Letterman with you in a few days." And so then I went and yeah, so I played Letterman with her, and that was one of those moments where here's your life before this thing occurs, and here's your life after. That was a life changing moment, and it's one of those moments that people will bring up to me and say, "Oh, wait, you're the guy that played with her on Letterman." Yeah, we were watching TV and just we saw that last night. Like, "Oh, that's cool. Madonna's playing guitar." Like when with Ministry, when we were on tour with Rob Zombie, he mentioned that. He's like, "Oh," he goes, "Yeah, we were watching TV that night and go, oh wow, that's cool. Madonna's playing guitar now." So
Yeah. So
and
when you first went over there, I mean, it's Madonna, and you're from a little town in West Texas, and you're just moving to the big city. Were you not like intimidated or freaked out? It's like, oh my god, this like huge star, or you're just like, oh whatever, just another person.
no, and looking back and looking through the lens of that everything happens for a reason sort of way of thinking, um, working at Guitar Center in Hollywood, you saw there was someone that you've seen on TV or some sort of celebrity or whatever every day coming in there.
Yeah,
My
that's true.
my favorite story is I helped David Carradine with strings, and he was barefoot.
Of course he
So
was.
I'll never know, like, did he come there barefoot or did he take his shoes off in the car and walk in? I didn't want to ask. I didn't want to look down and get a roundhouse to the face.
Yeah,
But
right. He was in character, maybe. I don't know.
yeah, there was always somebody in there. So that didn't really phase me. I
Gotcha.
didn't
Makes
grow
sense.
up listening to Madonna's music. That's not something I would have sought out. Uh, in a way, I'm glad that that happened the way it happened, because I have a fresh outlook going into her music. It's kind of the same for Ministry. Also, I didn't grow up listening to music to Ministry, but all my friends, it was like their favorite band. My favorite band was like Metallica and Pantera and Slayer, all the
Yeah.
bands that you,
Yeah,
all
yeah,
of
yeah.
your bands
Yeah,
that you would
yeah.
all bring in.
Monty,
So,
yeah, Monty. I should have mentioned at the top, but Monty's a legitimate metalhead. He knows his
right.
stuff. And I think I don't know. All I remember was my buddy Chris Barnes from Cannibal Corpse and 6 Feet Under mentioned that he had met you somewhere, and he went to the Madonna show, and like right in the middle of one of the songs, you played like I don't know a riff or two from either Cannibal or 6 Feet Under in the middle of the Madonna set. I mean, really, holy shit, that
Yeah,
was
when when
pretty insane.
when when Chris was at when the show he came to, uh, my amp was on the side of the stage. I think, yeah, yeah, my amp was like on the side of the. It wasn't on the stage, like on the side of the stage, and facing where he was. And so some of the stuff, since he was there, I would like throw in little bits also, just to kind of
That's so crazy. Yeah, it's funny how when you're again, icon, Madonna, the whole thing and everything. But you never know what in our world whether that's cool or not cool, right? So I remember we went to go see Fozzy, which Chris Jericho's band. He's a
mm,
friend of
yeah.
mine. We went to go see him out in Corona, and it was literally down the street from Kerry King's house. And Kerry and Jericho are friends, and obviously, I've been friends with Kerry forever. So we all ended up at Kerry's house after the show, and we're all hanging out and stuff. And I just introduced, like, here's my buddy Monty, and he plays guitar or whatever, because you never know like what Kerry would say. It's like, oh yeah, he's
Right.
Madonna's guitar player, well that would be cool, or he'd be like, what the
Yeah.
fuck. So finally, it was later in the evening. I go, I should tell you Monty's day job. Monty plays guitar for Madonna, and Kerry goes, oh my god, Gary Holt is one of the biggest Madonna fans on the
Yeah.
planet. I can't believe I'm I'm here with Madonna's guitar player, freaking out. And then didn't they both go to a show in Europe? Both Gary and Kerry went to a Madonna show in Europe, I think.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And
I,
Paul came. Yeah, I think Paul came, but
I think
Tom
yeah, I think they
Gilroy
all
didn't
went.
go. Yeah.
And I remember one of the shows where you would very nicely give us the tour of the stage and everything. And I remember Madonna's guitar tone for her electric guitar was it Raining Blood or was some Slayer thing.
That's right.
And
It was modeled from Carrie's amp. Yeah.
yeah, so I took a photo of that, sent it to Carrie, and he's like, "That's awesome." That's like,
I forgot about that, man.
yeah,
That's
it's
the
funny.
trip. Yeah, I bring that up to her sometimes, and she's just like, "Wow!" Like, one of the like the metal and Madonna stories is of hanging out with Anthrax, and they were asking me all this stuff. They have all these stories about her back in the day. Like, hey, they've gone over to her
Oh, in New
house,
York,
and
sure,
yeah,
sure.
yeah. And I'm like, what? And then Charlie and Scott and Frankie were like asking me like, oh, do you play the Prince parts on Like a Prayer? I'm like, Prince didn't. No, they asked like, do you guys play Like a Prayer? I'm like, yeah. Do you get to play Prince's parts? And I'm like, Prince didn't play on that. And they go, oh yeah, he did, he did. I'm like, no, he wrote a song on that album, but he didn't play on that. They go, ask her, ask her. So I'm like, okay. So I next time I see her, I'm like, settle something for me. I'm hanging out with Anthrax, and they tell me they're telling me all this stuff about your album and that Prince played on. They're like, how'd they know that? And I said, is that true? And she goes, yeah, but I guess there's two things that Prince didn't want credit on. That's the story of what I was told is that from
Yeah,
playing
yeah.
guitar on Like a Prayer and playing synth on I'm sorry, Stand Back from Stevie Nicks. And then
Oh
I guess he
wow.
didn't want it to overshadow take away from the song of like, okay, here's this song featuring this person. But
Sure, sure.
and
Yeah, I get
but
that.
that's funny how like, these metal guys, they know her music, better than me for
Oh
a
yeah, and
lot of this stuff.
yeah, and that first time that because I'd seen her once a long, long time ago, but when you were, I think it was the first time after I'd met you that she did that big, huge tour, and the first show, I think it was in New York. I was asking you, so one of your parts, just in case I get bored and I might like walk around the arena or something. But the show was so incredible that I was just like, my gosh, this show is unbelievable, and the whole show is great, and the choreography, the song, the set list and stuff was really great. And she was pushing the envelope pretty hard on that tour too. Like she did that whole thing where she lays down at the end of one of the songs and um, uh, says something about Jesus liking her private areas. And I was like, man, like Slayer think they're over the top. I think I texted Carrie and I said,
Yeah.
"Yeah, you guys think you're super satanic. This is what Madonna just did on stage."
Say, now you have to top her, Slayer. Like tomorrow's show,
Yeah, like
you got.
what do you do? So yeah, it's fun. It's funny how that those. I mean, I've just seen it so much in the music world and even the sports world. How metal collides with so many different things where you wouldn't expect it to be, or people fans. Because even I mean, there's tons of metalheads that love Madonna that are like massive fans of hers over all these years. So yeah, you just never know. But yeah, you got to live that for a while, which is pretty cool, obviously. Anyway, back to Ministry. So
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
and just one fix. Yeah, it was such a landmark. I mean, really the whole record. I think of all the records that Ministry made, this one, Psalm 69, I think is the best overall one. But there's that three sections kind of where they kind of turned like really metal. Do you know where that came from? Is from Al? Was he just naturally be heavier, or was it something that he decided like I want to get heavier, or we know where? Do you know where that came from?
That's a good question. I should ask him. I'll ask him that. But
I
I
think
think
we
a
we
lot of
talked.
that.
Oh, sorry to interrupt. I was just going to say when he was, I mentioned that he was recording when we were down in Cannibal Corpse, and ended up hanging out a lot with him. I think I remember asking him that question, but I can't. So long ago, I can't remember what the answer was. Unfortunately,
I think a lot of that came from Mikey because
yeah,
I think Mikey came on during "The Mind Is a Terrible Thing to Taste," and so
yeah,
I think there was probably more time, because Mikey played for Rigor Mortis, and
yeah. I was going to say Mike was in the band that we worked with, Rigor Mortis.
yeah, and so Al was like, "Hey, I want to showcase my guitar player, and this is
Another
what he
another
does really
Texas metal
well."
band. Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
More
yeah. So I
Texas.
think,
That makes sense. I think that's where what he said too was the same thing where he came in and had that metal thing. So we might as well kind of go from there. But I mean, it worked perfectly. It was, just such a fresh new thing that you're like, wow, this is cool. And what I love about it too is all these. So here we are again, all these years later, and we talk about, a lot of the times on this podcast, I'm going back to whether it's 70s, 80s, 90s music, not as much about today, because that's really the foundation of where heavy metal came from. And these are songs that define the genre. So I think it's important to talk about all this sort of stuff. But and you listen to stuff that you liked when you were younger that came out 30 some odd years ago, and a lot of times you're like, it just doesn't have the same. I don't have the same reaction to it. It doesn't feel the same. But I listen to this stuff, and even seeing you guys live, I mean, it's just as good and fresh today, if not better than it was back in the day. I think as a band, because everybody in back in the day, Ministry wasn't as together, let's say, as they are
yeah,
now. Yeah, I mean, you guys were on fire, and it's so great to see.
you can tell that we're all really close friends having a good time on
Yes,
stage.
yes,
And I don't, I didn't realize this with some other bands, but I've seen other bands that, or some of my favorite bands, but then afterwards they don't really hang out a lot or talk a lot. Like we make sure to always, you know, there's, I'll do, I'll warm my hands up and I'll do some, I do a lot of backing vocals. I'll do some vocal warm ups. But one of the most important things is making time where we all just hang out. And like there'll be a time me and Al will just sit and, whatever, even if we're just sitting in the lounge on the bus, and then we're always laughing at stuff. And there's a lot of laughter and a lot of great times. We don't have great times like he had back in the 90s, like not those kind of great times, thankfully.
Thankfully, by the way.
Thankfully. But the even better times, and I think it really shows when you see us and hear us live and in the
Yeah,
recordings.
yeah, that's a really good point, because it's very true when you see. There are a lot of bands, unfortunately, that exactly what you say. Like they're in it because the band is really big, but they don't necessarily hang out or even see each other other than on stage a lot of times. And look,
Yeah.
sometimes that works. The tension sometimes works because especially with angry metal music. But I find that it's just better for everybody if everybody gets along. Like I mean, we're really lucky. I mean, all the bands on Metal Blade, I mean, everybody gets along in the bands. They're
Hmm.
all good guys. They all hang out. But I've seen plenty of other big artists where that's not the case. and it's the backstage areas can be a little uneasy sometimes when you're wandering
Right.
around there. But I mean, whatever it is. But look, certainly, I think for a band to be successful and especially when you're on the road, you're in a tour bus together. I mean, if you're not getting along, that can't be a lot of fun. I mean, maybe you just get it all out on stage, but I think it's always much better if you could, enjoy what you're doing and not have it be like, oh, I'm gonna go on tour again with these idiots.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, performing these songs are a lot of fun too. It gets to where with a ministry set, it's like, okay, what's gonna, what song do we cut? Well, we've got to do
Yeah,
this one.
right.
We've got to do this one. We've got to do this one. And we should do this one because, um, we'll bring up at different times, like, that'd be cool to throw this back in the set. Here's a song that's never been done. Okay, if we do that, that means which one of
Something
these
else
do we
has to
cut?
go. Yeah. I mean, those are good decisions, though. It's like, for Metallica, for example, they've got so many different songs. That's why they can do, two sets on a weekend with no repeats. And, they were nice enough to me over the years to be, when they were doing their set list, and they would always interchange songs. They'd have a core set list, but then there'd be 5 or 6 different songs. They'd just pick from 40 different songs. They've been nice enough to let me pick some of those songs sometimes because it is hard because, they've got an awful lot of really good songs, especially live. So, it's always fun to go in. I usually try to pull something out that's a little bit not of the norm, so to speak. Like, for example, I asked them to play Trapped Under Ice once on I think the Death Magnetic tour. And they hadn't played it for like 16, 17 years. And I was there for 2 shows. They didn't play the first show, but they played the second show. I was like, oh, cool. And then they kind of added it back into the set list for a minute. So I was like, oh, cool. I gave Trapped Under Ice another life for a minute, but those are good decisions. Those are good problems to have. Like, which of
Yeah,
these amazing songs can we not play now?
and that's so cool that you can go see Metallica and say, "Hey, we play this one for me," and they'll go, "Hey, yeah."
Well, I've known them since before they were even a band, so it's an
you
interesting
you should
dynamic. But they're
you
good.
should
They're such good dudes.
you should see how far you can take it. Say, what if you guys come out and open with Dyer's Eve, and then go into Fight Fire with Fire, and then go into Damage Incorporated with no stops?
Yeah, that probably wouldn't go over too well. It'd
Find
be
all
amazing. It would be
find all
amazing.
their fastest songs and be like,
Yeah, right.
okay, all right,
Wear out Lars by the third song. It's crazy. So
yeah.
what do you got going on? What are your socials? Where can people find you? What else do you have going on?
It's at Monte Pittman everywhere. MontePittman. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, everything.
X.
And X, right. Well, we're working on the next Ministry album, and it's thinking about, like, set lists and stuff like that. That's for my input. Everybody's input's going to be a little different, of course, but that's what I think about going into. Is like, okay, how would these songs blend in with what we're already doing in the set list? And uh, it's it's taking shape, really well. It's pretty cool. Um, and then for me, I'm finishing up my next album, that I've been working on off and on for like 8 years. I kind of stopped, there was I toured and then went back with Madonna, and then we had COVID, and then had all this time with ministry, and then other stuff that I've been doing, and so I've been slowly but surely getting back into my stuff, and it was good to kind of. It's not like I took a break, but I just took my time. But in that process, kind of learned a lot about myself and what I do. Uh, I used to, when I first moved to LA, I started taking lessons from Dolores Rhodes, and we met from this. We were both at this guitar.
Vocal
It
lessons.
was music theory,
Oh,
really.
music theory. Gotcha. Yeah, because
Yeah.
she's famous,
Uh,
obviously, for all that.
right, and that's how she would teach. And I learned so much from her. And one of the things was that you have your signature. It's what you do that no one else does. It's part of your DNA. It's just what you do naturally. And the key is to hone in on that. Which, from playing music, it's one of the things I love about playing with Madonna is that you've got every style, every genre of music that you get to play. But now it's like going back and then listening to my earlier stuff, because like when you make your own album, you usually don't go back and listen to it. By the time it comes out, you've listened to it so much, you're kind of burn out on it. That's like when you give it to the world. But I'm going through and listening to, just like tricks that I've done before in other songs, going, oh wait, I'm doing that here. I'm doing that here. All right, let's really make that as good as we can make it. And so anyway, I'm halfway through mixing that. I can't wait for you to hear it. And other than that, I'm teaching. Teach guitar lessons right here.
Oh yeah.
Teach
Yeah,
online.
if you want some lessons from a legendary guitar player, here you go.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's been the majority of it. Teaching, finishing my album, and working on this ministry album.
Cool.
That's been
Well,
the main
dude,
things. Not too many other hours left in the
yeah,
day.
right. Awesome. Well,
After you
dude, thank
feed
you
the
so much.
cats.
Yeah, thanks so much for doing this. Always good to see you. And
Thanks for having me,
I'm
man.
sure we'll see you soon.
Yes, I'll be seeing you very soon.
You
Okay.
can't leave because we have
Right.
to